My sister sent me a text at 11 p.m. saying she quit her job and expected me to financially support her, her husband, and their 2 kids while she figured things out. I thought it was a joke until she showed up at my doorstep the next morning with suitcases. But would you believe me if I told you this wasn't even the craziest part of what happened next? I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. My name is Zoe Patterson, and I'm 28 years old. I work as a senior accountant at a mid-sized firm in Denver, Colorado. I've always been the responsible one in my family, the person who had a 5-year plan at 16, who put herself through college with scholarships and part-time jobs, who saved 30% of every paycheck since my first job at 15. My older sister, Melissa Harper, is the complete opposite. She's 32, married to a guy named Derek, and they have 2 kids, 8-year-old twin boys named Connor and Mason. Melissa has always been what my mom calls a free spirit, which is a nice way of saying she makes impulsive decisions and expects everyone else to deal with the consequences. Growing up, I watched my parents bail Melissa out of situation after situation. When she dropped out of college halfway through her sophomore year to find herself, they kept paying her rent. When she racked up credit card debt buying things she didn't need, they paid it off. When she got married at 23 to Derek, a guy she'd known for 4 months, they funded the entire wedding despite their own financial struggles. I learned early on that if I wanted anything in life, I had to work for it myself. Nobody was going to hand me opportunities or rescue me from bad choices. So I worked hard, saved harder, and built a life I was proud of. By 26, I'd bought my own condo, a beautiful 2-bedroom place with mountain views that I'd scrimped and saved for years to afford. The text came on a Wednesday night in late September. I'd just gotten home from a particularly grueling day at work. Tax season was approaching, and we were onboarding 3 new major clients. I kicked off my heels, poured myself a glass of wine, and was settling onto my couch when my phone buzzed. Melissa. "Hey, Zoe. Big news. I quit my job today." I stared at the message, my wine glass frozen halfway to my lips. Melissa had been working as a receptionist at a dental office. Nothing glamorous, but it was steady income with benefits. With Derek working part-time as a delivery driver, they needed every dollar they could get. I typed back cautiously. Me. What happened? Did something go wrong at work? Melissa. No, I'm just done with the 9-to-5 grind. It's not fulfilling, you know? I need time to figure out what I really want to do with my life. My stomach dropped. I knew that tone. That was the same tone she'd used when she'd decided to drop out of college. The same tone when she'd announced she was moving to California for 3 months to explore her creative side and came back broke and asking Dad for money. Me. Melissa, you have 2 kids. What about health insurance? What about bills? Melissa, that's actually why I'm texting. Derek and I talked about it, and we figured you could help us out for a bit, just temporarily. Maybe 6 months while I take some online courses and figure out my next career move. I read the message 3 times, certain I was misunderstanding something. Me. Help you out how exactly? Melissa. Well, you have that big condo and you're always saying how you have an extra bedroom. We figured we could stay with you for a while. And you make good money, so maybe you could cover groceries and stuff? Derek's going to keep his delivery job, but you know how expensive things are with kids. This would be so amazing for us, Zoe. We could finally get ahead instead of just surviving. I felt my face flush hot with anger. Was she seriously asking me to house and financially support 4 people while she took her time finding herself? I'd worked myself to exhaustion to afford my own place, and now she expected me to just hand it over? To pay for her family's living expenses while she figured out her next whim? Me. Melissa, I can't support 4 people. I have my own bills, my own mortgage. This doesn't make sense. Melissa, come on, Zoe. Family helps family. You've always been so uptight about money. You can afford it. You don't even have kids or a husband to worry about. We need this. The boys need stability. And this rent house we're in is falling apart anyway. The landlord wants to raise the rent next month. This is perfect timing. I set my phone down, my hands shaking. Perfect timing for whom? She'd made a unilateral decision to quit her job and now expected me to pick up the pieces. And she'd somehow twisted it into making me feel guilty, like I was being selfish for wanting to maintain the life I'd worked so hard to build. I called my mom. I needed someone to confirm I wasn't crazy for thinking this was absurd. Mom, did Melissa talk to you about quitting her job? There was a pause. She mentioned she was thinking about it. She said she talked to you about staying at your place for a while. She didn't ask me, Mom. She told me. She expects me to house and feed 4 people for 6 months while she takes online courses. This is insane, my mom sighed. Zoe, I know Melissa can be impulsive, but she's struggling. Those boys need stability. You have the means to help. I have the means because I worked for it. I didn't quit my job on a whim and expect someone else to fund my life decisions. You've always been so harsh with your sister, Mom said, and I could hear the disappointment in her voice. She's family. When did you become so cold? I hung up feeling worse than before. Somehow I was the villain in this story. Melissa made an irresponsible choice, but I was cold and harsh for not wanting to enable it. I didn't respond to Melissa's text that night. I needed time to think, to figure out how to handle this without destroying my relationship with my sister or my family. I went to bed hoping that maybe Melissa would come to her senses overnight, that she'd realize how unreasonable her request was. I should have known better. The next morning, Thursday, I woke up at 6:30 like always. I had a 7:30 meeting with a new client, so I needed to be out the door by 7. I was in my bathroom, halfway through my makeup routine, when my doorbell rang. I frowned. I wasn't expecting anyone, and delivery drivers usually just left packages by the door. The doorbell rang again, more insistently this time. Then someone started knocking. Zoe! Open up, it's freezing out here. Melissa's voice. I walked to my door in my bathrobe, my stomach already twisting with dread. I looked through the peephole and felt my jaw drop. Melissa stood on my doorstep with Derek beside her. Behind them were the twins, both in pajamas and looking half asleep. And surrounding them were suitcases. Multiple suitcases. A whole pile of bags and boxes stacked on my porch. I opened the door. What are you doing here? Melissa smiled brightly, as if showing up unannounced at 7 in the morning with her entire family was perfectly normal. Surprise! We figured it would be easier to just come over instead of going back and forth about it. The boys are excited to stay with Aunt Zoe. Connor and Mason did not look excited. They looked tired and confused. Melissa, I never said you could stay here. We didn't even finish our conversation. I know. But you were taking forever to respond and we had to give our landlord notice anyway. We told him yesterday we'd be out by the end of the week. So we figured, why wait? Let's just get settled in at your place. My mind reeled. You gave notice on your rental? Before I agreed to anything? Derek spoke up for the first time, his voice defensive. Look, Zoe, we're family. We knew you'd come through. You always do. And honestly, we didn't really have a choice. With Melissa not working and the rent going up, we couldn't afford that place anymore anyway. I stood in my doorway, staring at 4 people who had essentially made themselves homeless and were now on my doorstep expecting me to fix it. My sister had quit her job, given up their housing, and presumed I would just open my door and my wallet, and I had about 20 minutes to get ready for work. We need to talk about this, I said, my voice tight. Great, we can talk inside where it's warm, Melissa said, already moving toward the door with a suitcase in hand. Come on, boys. Let's go see your new room. I stood frozen in my doorway, watching Melissa shepherd the twins into my condo like she owned the place. Derek followed behind with 2 suitcases, not even making eye contact with me. Melissa, stop, I said firmly. Everyone needs to stay in the hallway, now. Melissa turned, her smile faltering for just a second before snapping back into place. Zoe, don't be dramatic. It's cold out here and the boys haven't had breakfast yet. That's not my problem. The words came out harsher than I intended, but I was beyond caring. You made decisions without consulting me. You can't just show up and move in. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Connor tugged on Melissa's sleeve. Mom, I'm hungry. See? Melissa gestured at her son like he proved her point. Zoe, we can discuss the details, but right now my children need warmth and food. Are you really going to make them stand in the hallway? It was emotional manipulation at its finest, and I knew it. But those kids were looking at me with confused, tired eyes, and they were innocent in all of this. I stepped aside but held up my hand. Fine, but this is temporary, just for this morning while we figure things out. I have to leave for work in 15 minutes. Perfect. That gives us time to get settled. Melissa breezed past me. That is not what I said. But she was already directing Derek to put the suitcases in my spare bedroom. The twins wandered toward my kitchen, and I followed them, my heart pounding with frustration and disbelief. I poured cereal for Connor and Mason while Melissa explored my condo like she was house hunting. Oh, this is perfect! The boys can share the spare room and Derek and I can sleep on the pull-out couch. Although, honestly, that room is big enough for a bunk bed. Do you have the number for your building manager? We'll need parking passes. Melissa! I kept my voice low so the boys wouldn't hear. You need to listen to me very carefully. I never agreed to this. You cannot stay here. Her expression shifted, the cheerful facade cracking. Where exactly do you expect us to go, Zoe? We gave notice on our place. We have no money for a deposit on a new rental. You want your nephews sleeping in our car? You should have thought about that before quitting your job. I made a decision for my mental health and my family's future. I'm sorry if you're too selfish. To understand that some things are more important than money. Derek appeared in the kitchen doorway. Look, Zoe, we're not asking for forever. Just a few months. Melissa's going to take some courses in social media marketing. There's huge money in that. Once she gets certified, she'll land a great job. We just need a bridge. A bridge I didn't agree to build, I shot back. And what are you doing to help? Are you planning to get a full-time job? His jaw tightened. I work as much as I can. Delivery driving is flexible, which we need with the kids. So I'm supposed to subsidize your flexibility? Melissa's eyes welled with tears. I can't believe how cruel you're being. We're family. When did you become so heartless? I glanced at the clock. 7:12. I had 18 minutes to finish getting ready and leave for my meeting. This argument was going nowhere, and I needed to think clearly. Something I couldn't do while late for work. I need to finish getting ready, I said tightly. When I get home tonight, we're having a serious conversation about next steps. And those next steps involve you finding somewhere else to go. I retreated to my bedroom and finished getting ready in record time, my hands shaking as I applied mascara. I could hear Melissa talking to the boys in cheerful tones, already making them comfortable, already acting like this was their home. When I emerged 10 minutes later, Derek was unloading suitcases in my spare room. The twins were watching cartoons on my TV. Melissa was making coffee in my kitchen. We'll talk tonight, I said coldly, grabbing my bag and heading for the door. Have a great day at work, Melissa called out, like this was a normal morning, like she hadn't just hijacked my entire life. I spent the entire day at work, distracted and anxious. My meeting with the new client went poorly because I couldn't focus. My colleague, Jennifer Cho, noticed immediately. You okay? You seem off, she said during our lunch break. I told her everything. The text. The surprise arrived. The manipulation. Jennifer's eyes widened. She just showed up with all her stuff and gave up their rental. So now if I kick them out, I'm the bad guy who made kids homeless. That's insane. She trapped you. Jennifer shook her head. What are you going to do? I don't know. If I let them stay, even temporarily, it'll turn into 6 months, then a year. Melissa never does anything temporarily. But if I force them to leave, your family will hate you, Jennifer finished. Exactly. What does your lease say about long-term guests? I blinked. I hadn't even thought about that. I'm not sure. I'd have to check. You should, because this isn't just about family drama. You could be violating your lease by having 4 extra people living there. You could lose your condo. A cold weight settled in my stomach. She was right. My building had rules about occupancy. I couldn't just house 4 additional people indefinitely. The rest of the day crawled by. I left work at 5:30, dreading what I'd find when I got home. The drive back to my condo felt like driving toward a battlefield. When I opened my door at 6:15, I was hit by the smell of cooking. Music played from my living room. The twins' shoes were scattered by the door. Derek's jacket hung on my coat rack. I walked into my living room and stopped dead. They'd rearranged my furniture. My carefully chosen minimalist setup was now cluttered with their belongings. Toys covered my coffee table. The twins' backpacks sat on my dining chairs. Someone had put family photos on my bookshelf, photos that weren't of my family, but of theirs. Melissa appeared from the kitchen, wearing an apron I didn't recognize. "Oh, good, you're home. I made dinner. Spaghetti and meatballs, the boys' favorite. I figured it was the least I could do to say thank you." I stared at her. "You rearranged my furniture?" "Oh yeah, sorry. I should have asked. But the flow was all wrong for having kids around. This layout is much more functional. You'll get used to it." "Where's Derek?" "He had an evening delivery shift. He'll be back around 9. The twins ran up to me. "Aunt Zoe, Mom says we get to stay here for a while. Can we watch a movie after dinner?" I looked at their excited faces and felt something inside me crack. They had no idea what was really happening. To them, this was an adventure, staying at Aunt Zoe's cool condo with the mountain views. "We'll see," I managed. During dinner, I barely spoke. Melissa kept up a running commentary about her plans, the online courses she'd found, the job market and social media, how much money she could make once she got certified. She spoke with the confidence of someone whose plan was already succeeding, not someone who'd just made herself and her family homeless on a whim. After the boys went to the spare room to play, I cornered Melissa in the kitchen while she washed dishes in my sink. "We need to talk about a timeline," I said. I know. I'm thinking 3 months, tops, maybe 4. These courses are self-paced, so I can— No, not 3 months. 1 week. Melissa turned off the water and faced me, her expression hardening. 1 week? Zoe, that's impossible. We can't find a place and come up with a deposit in 1 week. You should have thought about that before you quit your job and gave notice on your rental. So that's it? You're just going to throw us out on the street? I'm going to give you 1 week to make other arrangements. Call Mom and Dad. Look into emergency housing assistance. Figure something out, like an adult. Melissa's face flushed red. Mom and Dad can't help us. Dad's on disability, and Mom's working part-time at the grocery store. They're barely making it themselves. You're the only one with money, Zoe. You're the only one who can help. That doesn't mean I'm obligated to. What happened to you? Melissa's voice cracked. You used to be kind. Now you're just cold, bitter, obsessed with your perfect little life in your perfect little condo. God forbid anyone disrupts your precious routine. I built this life by making responsible choices, something you've never bothered to do. I have children, Zoe. I can't just think about myself anymore. Every decision I make affects them. I quit that job because I was miserable, and my kids were seeing their mother come home exhausted and depressed every single day. I want to show them that it's possible to chase something better. Then chase it on your own dime, I said. 1 week, Melissa. That's all you get. I went to my bedroom and closed the door, my whole body trembling. Through the walls, I could hear Melissa crying in the bathroom. Later, I heard her on the phone, probably calling our mom to paint me as the villain. I pulled out my lease and read through it carefully. Jennifer had been right. According to the occupancy clause, I was only allowed to have guests stay for More than 14 consecutive days with written approval from the building management. Having 4 people move in could not only get me in trouble with my lease, but could also violate fire codes. I had legitimate legal grounds to refuse them. But as I lay in bed that night, listening to the sounds of my sister's family settling into my home, I knew the legal grounds didn't matter to my family. To them, I'd always be the heartless sister who chose money over family. And the worst part? I was starting to wonder if they were right. Friday morning arrived with chaos. I woke up at 6 to the sound of cartoons blaring from my living room and the twins arguing over a toy. My alarm hadn't even gone off yet. I dragged myself out of bed and found Connor and Mason already dressed and eating cereal, their backpacks ready by the door. Melissa sat on my couch, scrolling through her phone, still in pajamas. "Morning," she said brightly. "Can you drop the boys at school on your way to work? Their school is kind of on your route. Well, 15 minutes out of the way, but still." I stared at her. "What?" "Their bus doesn't come out this far, and Derek had to leave early for a delivery. It would really help us out. Melissa, I have a 7:30 meeting." "I don't have time to— Please, Zoe." Connor looked up at me with big eyes. "We can't be late. We have a spelling test." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The kids didn't deserve to suffer because of their mother's poor planning. "Fine, but we're leaving in 20 minutes. Be ready." I ended up being 10 minutes late to my meeting because the school drop-off line was longer than expected. My boss, Richard Caldwell, gave me a pointed look as I slipped into the conference room. "Nice of you to join us, Patterson." "I'm sorry." "Family emergency. Is everything all right?" he asked, and I could see genuine concern in his expression. "It's fine. Won't happen again." But it did happen again. On Monday, Derek's car wouldn't start, so Melissa asked if she could borrow mine to take the twins to a doctor's appointment. On Tuesday, I came home to find Melissa had invited a friend over, someone named Brittany who I'd never met, and they were drinking wine on my couch while the twins ran wild, leaving sticky handprints on my walls. On Wednesday, the building manager, Mr. Lewis, caught me in the lobby. "Ms. Patterson, I need to speak with you about your unit." My stomach dropped. "What about it?" "We've had noise complaints from your neighbors, and I've noticed additional vehicles in your assigned spot and several people coming and going from your unit. How many people are currently residing there?" I hesitated. "It's temporary. My sister and her family are staying with me for a few days while they transition to new housing." Mr. Lewis pulled out a clipboard. "According to your lease, guests can only stay 14 consecutive days without written approval." "How long have they been there?" "Since Thursday, so almost a week. That gives you 7 more days before you'll need to submit a formal request, which requires a background check and an additional deposit of $500. If they're still there after 14 days without approval, you'll be in violation of your lease. $500. Another expense Melissa would expect me to cover. "They'll be gone before then," I said firmly. But when I got home that evening and mentioned the building manager's warning, Melissa barely reacted. 7 days is plenty of time. Derek's been looking at apartments. "We'll find something." "Have you actually applied to any jobs yet?" I asked. "I've been researching courses and updating my resume." "These things take time, Zoe. You've had almost a week. What have you actually done besides watch TV and rearrange my furniture?" Her eyes flashed. "I've been taking care of my children and trying to plan our future. Not all of us can just shut off our emotions and focus only on work like you do." Derek walked in then, holding bags of takeout. I picked up Chinese food. "I hope everyone's hungry. Did you use my credit card?" I asked, spotting my card peeking out of his pocket. He had the decency to look embarrassed. Melissa said it was okay. "We'll pay you back? When? When will you get your first paycheck from a job you haven't applied for yet?" "Jesus, Zoe, it's $40, Melissa snapped. "You act like we're bankrupting you." "It's not about $40. It's about boundaries. It's about respect. You're using my home, my car, my credit card, all without asking. We're family. We shouldn't have to ask permission for every little thing." I felt something inside me snap. "Get out," Melissa blinked. "What?" "Get out. All of you, tonight. I'm done. The room went silent. Even the twins stopped what they were doing and stared at me. You can't be serious, Melissa said slowly. I gave you a week. You've spent it taking advantage of me instead of actually looking for solutions. You're out, tonight, Derek stood up. Zoe, come on. Let's all calm down and talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. Pack your things and leave. Melissa's face crumpled and she started crying. Where are we supposed to go? It's 8 o'clock at night. That's not my problem anymore. Mom? Mason's small voice cut through the tension. Are we leaving? The look on his face, confused and scared, made my chest tighten. But I couldn't back down now. If I gave in again, this would never end. Start packing, I said quietly. Then went to my bedroom and locked the door. I could hear Melissa crying loudly in the living room. Could hear Derek trying to calm her down. Could hear the boys asking questions their parents couldn't answer. I sat on my bed, my hands shaking, wondering if I was making the right choice or if I'd just destroyed my family relationships forever. An hour later, there was a soft knock on my door. Zoe? It's me. Derek's voice. I opened the door a crack. He stood there looking exhausted and defeated. Can we talk? Just you and me? I stepped into the hallway and closed the door behind me. Through the living room doorway, I could see Melissa sitting with the twins, reading them a story in quiet voices. Look, Derek said, keeping his voice low. I know we've overstepped. I know Melissa's been difficult, but we genuinely have nowhere to go tonight. Just give us until the weekend. 2 more days. We'll be out by Saturday, I promise. Derek, you haven't even been looking for places. I haven't seen you on your laptop once. You haven't made a single phone call about apartments. He ran his hand through his hair. You're right. I've been avoiding it because I don't know how we're going to afford anything. The truth is, we're broke. We have maybe $300 to our name. No landlord will rent to us without a first month, last month, and a deposit. And with Melissa not working and my credit shot from some medical bills a few years back, that's not my responsibility. I know. He met my eyes. I know it's not. But those kids are there. They are innocent. They didn't ask for any of this. Just 2 more days to figure something out, please. I wanted to say no. Every logical part of my brain screamed that I should hold firm, that 2 more days would turn into 2 more weeks. But I looked past Derek at Connor and Mason, cuddled up on either side of their mother, and I felt my resolve weaken. Saturday, I said finally. Noon. If you're not out by then, I'm calling the police and having you removed. Thank you, Derek said, genuine relief flooding his face. We'll be gone, I swear. That night, I called my best friend from college, Amanda Price. We'd stayed close even though she lived in Seattle now. I needed someone outside the situation to tell me I wasn't crazy. You're absolutely not crazy, Amanda said after I'd explained everything. Your sister is manipulating you. She quit her job without a backup plan and expected you to fix it. That's not okay. But everyone keeps saying family should help family. Help, yes. Enable, no. There's a difference. If she'd come to you and said, I'm struggling, I need help creating a plan, that would be one thing. But she just dumped her problems in your lap and expected you to solve them. My mom thinks I'm heartless. Your mom has been enabling Melissa for years. She doesn't get to judge you for refusing to do the same. Amanda paused. What are you going to do if they're still there on Saturday? I don't know, I admitted. I want to believe Derek when he says they'll leave. But I don't think they have any real plan. Then you need to be prepared to follow through on calling the police. Because if you don't, Melissa will know you're bluffing and she'll never leave. Friday passed in tense silence. I went to work early and came home late, avoiding my own home. When I came back, I went straight to my room. I could hear Melissa and Derek arguing in hushed voices late into the night. Saturday morning came. I woke up at 11, giving them 1 hour to meet my deadline. I stayed in my bedroom, listening to the sounds of movement in the living room. Bags zipping, closet doors opening and closing, muffled conversations. At 11:45, I emerged from my room. Melissa and Derek stood by the door with the twins and all their belongings. But they weren't leaving. They were just standing there waiting. Well, I said. It's almost noon. Melissa took a deep breath. We need to talk to you about something. No, the time for talking is over. You need to leave. Zoe, just listen for 1 minute. No! My phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Mom? I answered it without thinking. Hello? Zoe Marie Patterson. What is this I hear about you kicking your sister and her babies out onto the street? My blood ran cold. Melissa had called her. Of course she had. Mom, that's not what's happening. Your sister called me in tears this morning. She said you're making them homeless. Is that true? She made herself homeless by quitting her job without a plan. She's your sister. She needs help and you're turning your back on her. I didn't raise you to be so selfish. Something in me broke. All the frustration, all the anger, all the guilt came pouring out. You didn't raise me at all, Mom. The words exploded from me. You were too busy bailing Melissa out of every mess she created. I raised myself. And now you want me to sacrifice everything I've worked for because she made another impulsive decision? No, I'm done. I hung up on her. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. Melissa stared at me with wide eyes. Even Derek looked shocked. You have 5 minutes to get out, I said, my voice eerily calm. Or I'm calling the police. And this time, I meant it. For a moment, nobody moved. Melissa, Derek, and the twins stood frozen in my entryway, surrounded by their hastily packed belongings. The air felt electric with tension. Then Melissa's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and answered immediately. Dad? Did Mom call you? Her voice was shaky, playing up the victim role perfectly. Yes, she's really kicking us out. I don't know what happened to her. She's not the sister I grew up with. I snatched the phone from her hand. Dad, do not get involved in this. My father's voice came through, tired and strained. Zoe, sweetheart, what's going on? Your mother is beside herself. Melissa quit her job without telling anyone, gave up her apartment, and showed up at my door expecting me to house and feed 4 people indefinitely. I gave her a week. That week is up. Can't you just help them a little longer? Just until— No, Dad, I can't and I won't. I handed the phone back to Melissa. 4 minutes. Derek finally moved, picking up 2 suitcases. Come on, Melissa. We need to go. Go where? Melissa's voice rose to a near shriek. We have nowhere to go. We'll figure it out. Let's just go. No. Melissa dropped her phone and grabbed my arm. Zoe, please. I'm begging you. Just 1 more week. I'll get a job, any job. I'll work at McDonald's if I have to. Just don't do this to the boys. I pulled my arm away. You're doing this to the boys, not me. You had choices at every step, and you chose this path. Connor started crying. Mason wrapped his arms around his mother's leg. And despite everything, despite the manipulation, the entitlement, the complete disregard for my boundaries, seeing those kids cry made me feel like the worst person alive. But I stood firm. Derek loaded the car in silence, making multiple trips. Melissa moved slowly, deliberately, making a show of how difficult this was. She kept looking at me, waiting for me to break, to take it back, to rescue her one more time. I didn't. At 12:14 p.m., Derek's car pulled away from my building with all 4 of them inside. I watched from my window as they drove off, then closed the blinds and sat down on my couch, my rearranged couch, and tried to feel something other than numb. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. Mom called back. Then my Aunt Sharon. Then my cousin Kelly. Melissa had clearly sent out a mass alert to the entire family, painting me as the villain who abandoned her in her time of need. I turned my phone off. The silence in my condo was deafening. I walked through the space, taking inventory of the damage. Scratches on my hardwood floors from where they'd dragged furniture. A stain on my couch cushion. The spare bedroom looked like a tornado had hit it. Drawers left open, hangers scattered on the floor, a juice stain on the carpet. I spent the rest of Saturday cleaning and putting my home back together. Moving furniture to its original positions. Scrubbing stains. Washing every dish they'd used. Trying to reclaim my space. Sunday, I finally turned my phone back on. 63 missed calls. 47 text messages. Most from family members telling me how disappointed they were in me. How selfish I was. How I'd turned my back on family in their darkest hour. Only 2 messages stood out. One from Amanda. Proud of you for holding your boundary. That took real strength. And one from Jennifer. How are you holding up? Want to grab coffee tomorrow before work? I responded to both, ignoring everyone else. Monday morning at work, I could barely focus. I kept wondering where Melissa and her family had ended up. Were the boys okay? Did they find somewhere to stay? Despite everything, I didn't actually want them to be suffering. Jennifer met me in the break room. You look exhausted. I feel exhausted. I told her about the weekend, about standing my ground, about the aftermath. You did the right thing, Jennifer said firmly. Hard doesn't mean wrong. Then why do I feel so awful? Because you have a conscience. But feeling guilty doesn't mean you should have acted differently. It just means you're human. That afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Is this Zoe Patterson? A woman's voice I didn't recognize. Yes, who's this? My name is Carol Bennett. I'm a social worker with Denver Family Services. I'm calling regarding your sister Melissa Harper and her family. My heart stopped. What happened? Are the kids okay? The children are fine. Your sister and her husband showed up at a family shelter on Saturday evening. During the intake process, Mrs. Harper mentioned that she'd been staying with you and that you'd forced them to leave. I'm calling to verify the situation. I gripped the phone tighter. I didn't force them to do anything. My sister quit her job and expected me to support her entire family indefinitely. I gave her a week to make other arrangements. She didn't, I see. And during the time they stayed with you, did you provide financial support? They used my credit card without permission, borrowed my car, and ate my food. I didn't offer, they just took. There was a pause. Ms. Patterson, I need to ask you something directly. Your sister claims you promised to support them for 6 months and then went back on your word, leaving them with no options. Is that accurate? That's completely false. I never promised anything. She told me she was quitting her job via text, then showed up at my door the next morning with all their belongings and acted like we'd agreed to this arrangement. We hadn't. Do you have documentation of these communications? I have the text messages, yes. I'd appreciate it if you could forward those to me. Mrs. Harper is applying for emergency housing assistance, and we need to verify all information. I sent Carol the text thread immediately after hanging up. The conversation clearly showed Melissa's presumption and my repeated refusals. An hour later, Carol called back. Thank you for sending those messages. Ms. Patterson, they paint a very different picture than what your sister described. I want you to know that we're working to find suitable housing assistance for the family. However, I also need to inform you that your sister has told other family members that you're required by law to house her since she became homeless while staying with you. That's not true, and I wanted you to hear it from a professional. Relief washed over me. Thank you for calling. One more thing. Your sister mentioned she's planning to pursue legal action against you for emotional distress. I can't give legal advice, but I'd recommend documenting everything, including the lease violation warnings from your building manager. After we hung up, I immediately emailed Mr. Lewis asking for written documentation of our conversation about the occupancy violation. He responded within an hour with a formal letter confirming the dates, the warnings, and the potential consequences I'd faced. Tuesday evening, my mom finally called. I answered with trepidation. Zoe. Her voice was cold. Mom, I just spoke with a social worker who told me you've been showing them private family text messages. I showed them the truth. Melissa lied about our arrangement. She's your sister. You don't air family business to strangers. She made it their business when she applied for services and lied about what happened. She's in a shelter, Zoe. A homeless shelter. With her babies. Do you understand what you've done? I understand that she quit her job without a plan and expected me to fix it. I understand that she violated my lease and could have gotten me evicted. I understand that she used my credit card without permission and took over my home without asking. What I don't understand is why I'm the bad guy for refusing to enable her. You've always looked down on her, Mom said bitterly. Always thought you were better because you had a good job and a fancy condo. You've never understood what it's like to struggle. I've struggled plenty, Mom. I just didn't expect everyone else to bail me out when things got hard. I worked through it. Well, congratulations on being perfect. I hope you're happy now that you've destroyed your relationship with your family. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there holding my phone, feeling the weight of her words. Had I destroyed my family? Maybe. But what was the alternative? Letting Melissa move in permanently? Draining my savings to support 4 people? Losing my home because of lease violations? Wednesday brought a new development. I got home from work to find an envelope taped to my door. Inside was a handwritten letter from Melissa. Zoe, I'm sorry for how things ended. You were right, I should have planned better. The boys and I are staying at Lighthouse Family Shelter on Colfax. Derek got a full-time position at a warehouse, and I got hired at a call center. We start next week. The shelter has a program that helps families save for apartments, so we should have our own place in about 2 months. I'm writing because Connor keeps asking about you. He wants to know if Aunt Zoe hates him. I told him no, that you just needed your space. But he misses you. If you want to visit, you can call the shelter. No pressure. I understand if you don't want anything to do with us anymore. I read the letter 3 times, my emotions churning. Part of me was relieved they'd found jobs and were working toward stability. Another part was angry that it had taken losing everything to force them into action. And a small part wondered if I'd been too harsh, too unforgiving. But the image of Connor asking if I hated him broke something in me. I picked up my phone and called the shelter. The woman who answered at Lighthouse Family Shelter had a warm, patient voice. After explaining who I was, she put me on hold to check if Melissa would allow me to visit. She says you're welcome to come by, the woman said when she returned. Visiting hours are until 8 p.m. The boys will be excited to see you. I drove to the shelter that evening with my stomach in knots. The building was an old converted school on Colfax Avenue, surrounded by a chain-link fence. Inside, the lobby was clean but institutional, plastic chairs, motivational posters on the walls, the faint smell of industrial cleaner. A staff member checked my ID and led me to a common room where families gathered. I spotted the twins immediately. They were sitting at a table working on homework, and when Connor looked up and saw me, his whole face lit up. Aunt Zoe! Both boys rushed over and hugged me. I knelt down and wrapped my arms around them, feeling tears prick my eyes. Whatever anger I had toward Melissa, these kids were innocent. I missed you guys, I said, and meant it. We missed you too, Mason said. Do you want to see our new room? We have bunk beds. Maybe later, buddy. Where's your mom? She's meeting with her case manager. Dad's at work. Connor tugged on my sleeve. Are you still mad at us? I was never mad at you, I said gently. Not for 1 second. Melissa appeared then, walking slowly into the common room. She looked different, tired, thinner, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail instead of the styled waves she usually wore. No makeup. She wore jeans and a plain t-shirt that looked like it might have come from the shelter's donation closet. Hi, she said. Quietly. Hi. We stood there awkwardly, for a moment before Melissa gestured to a quieter corner of the room. Boys, stay here and finish your homework. Aunt Zoe and I need to talk. We sat down at a small table away from the main activity. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Thank you for coming, Melissa finally said. I wasn't sure you would. I got your letter. You said the boys got jobs? Derek and I? Yeah, he's working at a distribution warehouse. Full-time. Benefits after 90 days. I'm doing customer service at a call center. We start training next Monday. That's good. Really good. Melissa picked at her thumbnail. The social worker told me she called you, that you showed her our texts. She asked me to verify your story. Your story wasn't true? I know. Melissa's voice was barely a whisper. I panicked. I thought if I told them you'd promised to help and then backed out, they'd give us priority placement. It was stupid. It was manipulative. Like everything else you did. Her eyes filled with tears. You're right. I know you're right. I've been thinking a lot these past few days, and I've been a terrible sister to you. A terrible person. I waited, saying nothing. I quit that job because I was miserable, Melissa continued, but I didn't think through any of it. I just assumed things would work out because they always have before. Mom and Dad always caught me when I fell, and when they couldn't anymore, I thought you would. She wiped her eyes. I took advantage of you? I took advantage of everyone. And now we're in a homeless shelter because I couldn't be a responsible adult. It was the first time I'd ever heard Melissa take real accountability for her actions. No excuses, no blaming circumstances. Just raw honesty. Why did you really come here? Melissa asked. After everything I put you through? Because Connor asked if I hated him, and I needed him to know that I don't. He's been talking about you every day. Both of them have. Melissa's voice cracked. They don't really understand what happened. They just know we don't live at your place anymore and you haven't come to see them. I'm here now. We sat in silence for a moment, watching the twins work on their homework across the room. The program here is actually really good, Melissa said. They're teaching us budgeting, job skills, and how to manage money. Things I should have learned years ago but never bothered to. They match our savings dollar for a security deposit. If Derek and I both work and save, we can have our own apartment in 8 to 10 weeks. That's great, Melissa. Genuinely. I know it doesn't fix what I did. I know I probably ruined our relationship permanently. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. But I want you to know I'm trying. Not because I have to, but because I need to. For the boys. For Derek, for myself. I believed her. Maybe because I wanted to, or maybe because I could hear the difference in her voice. Less entitlement, more humility. Can I ask you something? I said. Why did you really quit? The real reason. Melissa was quiet for a long moment. Because I was drowning, and I thought running away would save me. We were behind on rent. Behind on everything. Derek's delivery job wasn't bringing in enough, and my receptionist's salary barely covered groceries. Every day I went to work feeling like a failure, came home feeling like a failure, went to bed feeling like a failure. She twisted her hands together. I thought if I could just reset everything, get a better job, learn a more valuable skill, we could finally get ahead. But I didn't want to admit we were struggling, so I acted like it was about finding myself or whatever. The truth is, I was scared and desperate, and I made it everyone else's problem. It was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. You could have just told me you were struggling, I said. Asked for help with a plan instead of showing up with suitcases. I know. But asking for help means admitting you failed, and I wasn't ready to do that. It was easier to pretend I was choosing to leave my job rather than admit we were barely surviving. She looked at me. You've always had your life together. Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect condo. I didn't want to be the mess-up sister asking the successful one for a handout. I'm not perfect, Melissa. I've struggled too. I just didn't broadcast it to everyone. I'm learning that now. Too late, but I'm learning. Connor came over then, interrupting our conversation. Aunt Zoe, can you help me with my math homework? It's multiplication, and I'm stuck. I spent the next hour with the twins, helping with homework, hearing about their new school, playing a card game they'd learned from another kid at the shelter. They seemed remarkably resilient, adapting to their new circumstances with the flexibility that children somehow possess. When visiting hours were ending, Connor hugged me tightly. Can you come back, please? I looked at Melissa, who was watching us with an unreadable expression. Would that be okay? I asked her. The boys would love it, and I'd like it too, if you're willing. I thought about everything that had happened. The boundary violations, the manipulation, the family drama. Part of me wanted to walk away and never look back, to protect myself from being taken advantage of again. But these were my nephews. My sister, my family. I'll come back on Saturday, I said. We can take the boys out for lunch if the shelter allows it. Mason's eyes went wide. Really? Really? Driving home that night, I felt different. Lighter somehow. Not because everything was fixed or forgiven, but because I'd held my boundary when it mattered, and was now choosing to extend grace from a place of strength rather than obligation. My phone rang. Jennifer, how'd it go? She asked. Better than expected. She apologized. Took real accountability. They got jobs and are working toward their own place. How do you feel? Honestly, relieved and a little hopeful. I'm not opening my door to them again, but maybe we can rebuild something. On my terms this time. That sounds healthy. I'm proud of you. When I got home, my condo was quiet and peaceful. My furniture was back in place. My space was mine again. I'd proven to myself that I could set boundaries and enforce them, even when it was painful. My phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. Melissa, thank you for coming today. It meant everything to the boys. To me, too. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I promise I'm going to do better. Starting with paying you back the $230 we spent on your credit card. First paycheck. No excuses, I stared at the message. It was a small gesture, but it showed awareness of the specific harm she'd caused. That was new. Me. I appreciate that. See you Saturday. I set my phone down and looked around my condo. For the first time in 2 weeks, I felt like I could breathe. The situation wasn't perfect. My relationship with my mother was still strained. Some extended family members still thought I was heartless. Melissa and her family still had a long road ahead of them. But I'd learned something crucial. Saying no to someone you love doesn't make you selfish. It makes you someone who values themselves enough to have boundaries. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is refuse to enable their self-destruction. I'd held my ground. And somehow we were all still standing. Saturday arrived with clear Colorado skies. I'd spent Friday evening researching kid-friendly restaurants near the shelter, finally settling on a pizza place with an arcade. Connor and Mason would love it. I arrived at the shelter at 11 a.m. The boys were already waiting in the lobby, practically bouncing with excitement. Melissa stood behind them looking nervous. "Are you sure this is okay?" she asked. "I can come with you if you want supervision or it's fine. Just us." I looked at Derek, who'd gotten off work early to see them off. "I'll have them back by 2. Derek nodded. "Thanks for doing this, Zoe. Really." The drive to the restaurant was filled with the twins' chatter about school, their new friends at the shelter, and a gecko they'd seen in the courtyard. Normal kid stuff. It made me realize how much I'd missed them during the chaos. At the restaurant, we ordered a large pepperoni pizza and the boys ran off to play arcade games with the $20 in tokens I'd bought. Watching them laugh and compete over skee-ball, I felt the knot in my chest loosen further. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Unknown. "This is your cousin, Kelly. I heard you actually showed up to see Melissa. Does that mean you're finally going to help them properly? They need first and last month's rent for an apartment. Since you have the money, you should step up." I stared at the message, anger flaring. Even now, even after everything, the family pressure continued. I blocked the number without responding. Connor came running back. "Aunt Zoe, I won 50 tickets. Can we get something from the prize counter?" "Absolutely. Show me what you're thinking." We spent another hour there, the boys collecting tickets and eventually choosing matching rubber bouncy balls from the prize selection. Simple things. Cheap things. But watching their faces light up reminded me what actually mattered. On the drive back, Mason asked the question I'd been dreading. "Aunt Zoe, why don't we live with you anymore?" I glanced in the rearview mirror at his confused face. "Because your mom and I needed to figure some things out, and sometimes grown-ups need their own space. But Grandma said you kicked us out because you don't care about family." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Of course Mom had said that to them. Your grandma was upset and said something she shouldn't have. The truth is, I care about you guys very much. But I couldn't have everyone living at my place forever. Are you still mad at Mom? No, buddy. Your mom and I are working things out. Good, because she cries a lot when she thinks we're asleep. That hit me harder than expected. Whatever mistakes Melissa had made, she was clearly struggling with the consequences. When I dropped them off at the shelter, Melissa met us at the door. "How was it?" she asked the boys. "Amazing." Connor held up his bouncy ball. "We got pizza and played games, and Aunt Zoe let us get prizes." "That sounds wonderful. Go wash up for dinner, okay? Dad brought back sandwiches." After the boys ran off, Melissa turned to me. "Thank you. Seriously, they haven't stopped smiling since they found out you were coming. They're good kids. They are. She hesitated. Can I ask you something? Why did you really come back? After everything, you could have just cut us off completely, because walking away completely felt wrong. But so did letting you take advantage of me. I'm trying to find a middle ground. Melissa nodded slowly. I can respect that, and Zoe? I meant what I said about paying you back. Derek and I sat down with our case manager and made a budget. We'll have your money within 3 weeks of our first paychecks. I believe you. And surprisingly, I did. Over the next 2 weeks, something unexpected happened. Melissa kept her word. She texted me updates about their job training. She sent a picture of their first paycheck stubs. She called to ask advice about budgeting instead of asking for handouts. The shift was remarkable. Meanwhile, the family drama continued. My mom still wasn't speaking to me directly, but I'd heard through Aunt Sharon that she'd told everyone at church about my heartlessness. My cousin Kelly had apparently started a Facebook post about the situation, painting me as a wealthy villain who abandoned her struggling sister. I chose not to engage. Jennifer had given me solid advice. You can't control what they say about you. You can only control your actions. 3 weeks after the shelter visit, I got a video call from Melissa. When I answered, both she and Derek were on screen, sitting in what looked like a small office. Guess what? Melissa's smile was genuine. We got approved for an apartment. That's amazing. When do you move in? 2 weeks. It's a 2-bedroom in Aurora near the boys' school. It's not fancy, but it's ours. Well, it will be once we pay the deposit and first month's rent. My stomach tightened slightly. Was this the part where they asked me for money? Derek must have seen my expression. We have enough saved from our paychecks, he said quickly. The shelter's matching program gave us $800, and we saved another $900. Plus, we got tax refunds we weren't expecting, $750. That's exactly what we need. And, Melissa added, we wanted to pay you back now instead of waiting until we're in the apartment. She held up her phone, showing a payment app screen. $237. I'm sending it now. My phone pinged with the notification. You didn't have to do that yet, I said. You need every dollar for the move. No, we needed to show you we're serious. About being responsible. About respecting you. Melissa's eyes were sincere. You were right about everything, Zoe. I was entitled. I expected everyone to fix my problems. And I'm not that person anymore. Or at least I'm trying not to be. After we hung up, I sat staring at my phone. The money she'd sent back wasn't life-changing for me, but the gesture was everything. It showed growth. It showed respect. It showed she understood. That evening, Amanda called from Seattle. So I've been following the saga, she said. Sounds like things are improving? Cautiously, yeah. They're getting their own place. She paid me back. She's been respectful. And your mom? Still not speaking to me. She's convinced I'm a terrible person. You know that says more about her than you, right? Intellectually, yes. Emotionally, it still hurts. Of course it does. She's your mom. But Zoe, you did something really important. You showed everyone, including yourself, that you have boundaries and you'll enforce them. That's powerful. The following Saturday, I helped Melissa and Derek move into their new apartment. It was modest. Worn carpet, outdated appliances, beige walls that had seen better days. But it was clean, safe, and theirs. Watching Melissa direct where furniture should go, seeing the boys excited about their new room, observing Derek carefully assembling a second-hand dining table, it felt right. They were building something through their own effort, not because someone rescued them. I got you a housewarming gift, I said, pulling out a wrapped box. Melissa opened it to find a set of basic kitchen essentials: dish soap, sponges, paper towels, trash bags. Practical, unglamorous things they'd need. This is perfect, Melissa said, and I could tell she meant it. Thank you. There's also this. I handed her an envelope. Inside was a gift card to the grocery store for $100. Zoe, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. There's a difference. Melissa hugged me then, And for the first time in years, it felt genuine. Not manipulative, not performative, just a sister hugging her sister. As I was leaving, Connor ran up to me. "Aunt Zoe, want to see my room before you go?" He dragged me down the hall to a small bedroom he'd share with Mason. They'd already set up their beds and put up a poster of some superhero I didn't recognize. "It's smaller than our old room," Connor said, "but Mom says it's special because we earned it ourselves." Your mom's right. This is pretty special. Driving home that evening, I reflected on how much had changed in just a month. My relationship with Melissa wasn't perfect. There was still wariness on my side, still work to be done on trust. But it was honest now. Real. My phone rang as I pulled into my parking garage. "Mom." I debated not answering, but finally picked up. "Hello? I heard you helped them move today." Her voice was softer than it had been. "I did. Your Aunt Sharon said Melissa is doing well. Working, paying her own bills." "She is." There was a long pause. "Maybe I was too hard on you." It wasn't quite an apology, but from my mother it was close. "Maybe I could have handled things better too," I offered. "I just worry about her." "About all of you. I don't want my girls fighting. We're not fighting anymore, Mom. We're figuring it out." After we hung up, I sat in my car for a long moment. Nothing was perfect. Mom and I still had issues to work through. The extended family still thought I was cold. Some relationships might never fully recover, but I'd learned I could say no without being cruel. I could have boundaries without being heartless. And most importantly, I could help someone without sacrificing myself. My condo was quiet when I walked in. My space, my sanctuary, my hard-won peace. And for the first time in a month, I felt truly at home. 4 months later, I sat in my favorite coffee shop working on my laptop when my phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. "Melissa, can you come over for dinner Thursday? I'm making a pot roast. The boys have been asking when you're visiting again, me. I'll be there." "What time?" Melissa, 6? "And Zoe, bring a friend if you want." "I'd like to meet the people in your life." I smiled at that. The invitation wasn't just about the boys anymore. Melissa was making an effort to know me, not just use me. Thursday evening, I brought Jennifer along. She'd been curious about how the situation had evolved, and I figured it was time to show her the outcome of all that conflict. Melissa's apartment looked different than it had on move-in day. She'd painted the living room a soft blue. Curtains hung in the windows. Family photos lined the walls, including one of all of us from Thanksgiving at my parents' house, the first holiday we'd spent together in years. "Your place looks amazing," I told her as she took our coats. "Thanks. We've been fixing it up little by little. Derek installed shelves last weekend." She gestured proudly at the built-in bookshelf he'd constructed. "And I got promoted at work last month, so we finally have a little breathing room in the budget." "You got promoted?" "That's fantastic. Team leader position, 30% pay increase. They said my organizational skills were exactly what the department needed." She grinned. "Who knew all those years of juggling kids' schedules would count as job experience?" Derek emerged from the kitchen wearing an apron that said Grill Master. "Dinner's ready. I hope everyone's hungry." The meal was simple but good. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables. The twins entertained us with stories from school. Connor had gotten the lead in the class play. Mason had joined the soccer team. They were thriving. After dinner, while Derek handled dishes and the boys played video games, Melissa, Jennifer, and I sat at the table with coffee. "So, Jennifer," Melissa said, "Zoe tells me you're the one who gave her advice during everything." Jennifer glanced at me, uncertain how to respond. "It's okay," I assured her. "We can talk about it." "I just told her she wasn't wrong for having boundaries," Jennifer said carefully. "That saying no to family doesn't make you a bad person." Melissa nodded slowly. She needed to hear that, and I needed to learn it. The hard way. She looked at me. "I've been seeing a therapist. Through my insurance at work. We've been talking about patterns, how I learned to depend on other people to solve my problems instead of solving them myself. That's really great." "Melissa, She helped me understand that when you said no, you weren't abandoning me. You were refusing to enable me. There's a huge difference. Melissa wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. I was so angry at you for weeks after we left your place. I thought you were cruel. But being in that shelter, having to actually face my choices and fix them myself, that was the wake-up call I needed. If you'd let us stay, I would have just kept coasting. Never getting better, never growing up. You've come really far, Jennifer said. Not everyone has the self-awareness to recognize that. I'm trying. Some days are harder than others, but we're making it work. Later, as Jennifer and I drove back to my place, she turned to me. That was not what I expected. What do you mean? I expected tension, awkwardness. Instead, I saw a functional family. Your sister seemed genuinely different. She is. She still has moments where she slips into old patterns. Like last month, she asked if I could loan her money for Christmas presents. But when I said no and suggested she make a Christmas budget instead, she actually thanked me for keeping her accountable. That's incredible growth. It is. And honestly, our relationship is better now than it's ever been. Because it's based on mutual respect, instead of one person constantly rescuing the other. The holidays that year were different too. Mom hosted Christmas dinner, and for the first time in my adult life, there was no drama. No one asked me for money. No one made passive-aggressive comments about my selfishness. Melissa had apparently told the whole family her side of the story. The real side, where she acknowledged her mistakes. Even Cousin Kelly apologized, though it was clear she didn't fully understand what she was apologizing for. On Christmas evening, Mom pulled me aside while everyone else watched the boys open presents. I owe you an apology, she said quietly. A real one. I waited. I enabled Melissa for years. I see that now. And when you refused to do the same, I was angry because it forced me to confront my own behavior. Mom's eyes glistened. You were right to stand your ground. She needed someone to stop catching her when she fell so she could learn to catch herself. Mom, let me finish. She took my hands. You've always been so independent, so capable. I never worried about you because you never needed me to. But I realize now that I neglected you emotionally because I was so focused on fixing Melissa's problems. That wasn't fair to you. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in years. Maybe ever. Thank you for saying that, I managed, my throat tight with emotion. I'm proud of you, Zoe. Of the woman you've become. Of your strength. And I'm sorry it took me so long to tell you, we hugged. And something in me that had been tense for months finally relaxed. New Year's Eve found me at my own condo with Amanda, who'd flown in from Seattle to visit. We were watching the countdown on TV when she asked the question I'd been reflecting on for weeks. Looking back on everything, would you change anything? I thought about it carefully. Maybe I would have set boundaries sooner, been clearer from the start. But the actual decision to say no? To make Melissa face consequences? No, I wouldn't change that. Do you think she would have changed without hitting rock bottom? Honestly? No, she needed to fail. She needed to struggle. As harsh as that sounds, it was the only thing that made her grow. Amanda raised her glass. To hard lessons and harder boundaries. I clinked my glass against hers. And to know the difference between helping and enabling. 3 weeks into January, I got a call from Carol Bennett, the social worker who'd originally contacted me about Melissa. Ms. Patterson, I wanted to give you an update. Your sister and her family are officially graduating from our program. They've maintained stable housing, employment, and savings for 4 consecutive months. We consider that a success story. That's wonderful news. I also wanted to tell you something off the record. Carol's voice softened. In my 10 years doing this work, I've seen hundreds of families. Most of them have relatives who either completely abandon them or enable them into permanent dependency. You did something rare. You helped without enabling. Your sister told me you're the reason she finally got her life together because you loved her enough to let her fail. After we hung up, I sat with those words. Loved her enough to let her fail. That's exactly what it had been. Not cruelty, not abandonment, But love is expressed through boundaries and consequences. 6. Months after that initial text message, the one where Melissa had announced she'd quit her job and expected me to support her, I stood in her apartment helping her celebrate Derek's birthday. The twins were laughing. Music played. The fridge was full of food they'd bought with their own money. Bills were paid. Life was stable. Melissa caught my eye from across the room and mouthed, "Thank you." I knew what she was thanking me for. Not for taking them in. Not for giving them money or solving their problems. She was thanking me for saying no. For standing firm. For forcing her to become the person she was capable of being all along. And I realized something profound. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to save them from themselves. My phone buzzed with a text from Connor. Connor. "Aunt Zoe, thank you for coming. Dad says you're the best aunt ever." "I agree, love you." I smiled and typed back, "Love you too, buddy. See you next weekend for game night." I looked around my condo that night, my peaceful, drama-free, boundary-protected space. I'd fought hard to keep it. I'd endured family judgment, guilt trips, and accusations of heartlessness. But I'd also learned my worth. I'd proven I could love people without sacrificing myself. I'd discovered that saying no doesn't make you selfish, it makes you honest. And most importantly, I'd watched my sister transform from someone who expected others to fix her life into someone who built her own future. That text message 6 months ago had changed everything. It had forced me to choose between enabling dysfunction or enforcing boundaries, between being liked or being respected, between temporary peace and long-term growth. I'd made the right choice. The hard choice. The choice that hurt in the moment but healed in the long run. And as I turned off the lights and headed to bed in my quiet, reclaimed sanctuary, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Real. Lasting peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because I'd finally learned that protecting my peace wasn't selfish, it was necessary. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.